Welcome everybody to the ballroom for a discussion on breaking stereotypes in the media industry. I'd like to welcome to the stage Chaka Sobhani, Matilda Eggeray Cooper, and Jordan Ross. Thank you very much.
Hey. Okay, just testing that the mic is on. So thank you so much for introducing us. And as mentioned, the whole purpose of this conversation is actually looking at maybe some of the solutions that we can get to as far as stereotypes in the media industry. I kind of just wanted to actually clarify first and foremost what we mean by stereotypes. I think inherently the assumption is that it's a negative thing, but actually a stereotype is a fixed or oversimplified view or idea or perception of a people or thing. And I think thankfully over, say, the past few years, we're starting to see things evolve as far as representation, but behind the scenes, it's still a completely different story. But the first thing I guess I wanted to throw out to you guys is what have you seen as far as that evolution across different kind of community groups and so forth?
Should I go first? Okay. Hi, everyone. So I guess for me, my background, my kind of work focuses a lot on the LGBTQ plus communities. So I think the main thing that I've seen, particularly in the last decade, is a kind of mass commercialization of that. And I think you can kind of start seeing that again now with, especially after like things like Black Lives Matter, where there's a lot more, I guess I would call it performative activism of, it's more conscious for, I guess, like brands, agencies, creatives, but it's coming from a good place, but I don't think people are best, what am I trying to say? I don't think people are kind of putting best practice into how to represent these different communities really authentically. So I think for me in the last kind of like 10 years or so, that's kind of what I've noticed. A greater awareness, but not a kind of like greater understanding.
Right, and by commercialization, just almost like a commodification of different groups. Okay, and yourself?
He said it very eloquently and far more eloquently than I was about to say it. But I'd agree. I think the thing is, I think it's always important to try and stay on the positive side of this. So it's huge that even in the last decade, the levels of awareness and the levels of goodwill of wanting to do something have shifted so much as an industry, as an advertising industry, as a creative industry as a whole, from a brand point of view. I was about to say government, that's bullshit, so let's put that to one side, particularly right now. So there's great goodwill, but I think and there's always a sort of an overcorrect. So that's always good in certain ways, but to your point, I think ultimately, as someone who's in a number of minority groups, you want to see accurate representation. And you also want to see fair representation, so that, obviously the saying, you have to see it to be it, and all the rest of it. And I think with that sort of overcorrect, the underlying thing that we end up getting into is because people just don't know, is we get into a place of fear. And sometimes almost like an inertia can come into play because people want to do the right thing, but they're so worried about fucking it up or getting it wrong. And I think collectively what we've got to try and do is get away from this sense of right, wrong, and kind of blaming people. Oh my God, it's about intent. Have you got the right intent? Are you trying to do the right thing? The problem is people aren't talking to the right groups and involving them from the beginning. That obviously we know about representation, not just in our industries, behind the camera, in front of the camera, etc. There are huge discrepancies there, which ultimately make it more difficult for representation to be authentic.
Yeah.
So people are making assumptions. There was one, this is a very, very small thing. I remember this years ago, walking past a huge billboard on the West Way. And by the way, it just made me smile, but it was obviously, dudes writing, like, this is going to be a female ad for a bank, and it was like a lady at a nail salon, because that's what we like to do. We like to go to nail salons. And it was for mobile banking. And, if anyone has a vagina, they know the fact that the one thing you can't fucking do when you're getting your nails done is use your fucking mobile phone. I mean, go figure. But anyway, so it's fine. I mean, that's a very, very small example, but you amplify that across all of the groups that we're obviously trying to represent in a fair and obviously diverse world. Ultimately, we're still far away. I think the intent is good. We've just got to be able to talk about it a little bit more openly and not worry about getting it wrong and being lambasted for it, I think.
Yeah, and I guess that feels, I suppose, valid when we're thinking about best intentions. But what about when the suspicion is people are actually using stereotypes to get a reaction? So they know that actually if I kind of put this image or of this group of people out there, that it might get the controversy that I want because there's no such thing as bad news. You know, what do we do in those kind of instances where we feel people are trying to be a bit tactical with how they're presenting groups? Sorry, that wasn't in the list.
Well, hopefully, I mean, thank God I've never been in that situation. And it would be a bloody awful situation to be in. My instinct, my reaction would be you'd call it out. You'd call it out privately first to make sure that, you know, you were having the right conversation. And if I'm honest, if it was disrespectful, you'd end up calling it out publicly.
Right.
And from a personal point of view, I wouldn't want anything to do with it. So I think you have personal choices to make in these situations as well. But like I said, thank God I've never been in that situation.
Oh, I would just tell them to fuck off, but that's just kind of the way I deal with things. But no, I agree with you. I think you do your kind of like own internal thought process, and you kind of do your own research. I think again for me, I question a lot. I kind of question everything, even if it's like briefs from like creatives or agencies. You kind of look at them and go, is this trying to achieve, like, what's the kind of goal here? What they're trying to achieve, what they're trying to do with it? And also kind of, even if it's something that I'm not so familiar with, I ask my friends about it. I ask my, like, you know, people from that community, or I'll ask my mum, like, you know, she's like the best sounding board in the world, but like, you know, people that you trust, but also people who you trust who are also going to have a different viewpoint than you. Because I think that's really important, trying to find people who won't necessarily agree with you, and you can actually have a bit of a debate and a bit of a kind of like, you know, sounding board session that also isn't like Twitter.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And kind of like have that really healthy debate and discussion.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably kind of the best process in my mind.
Yeah, and I mean, that's obviously, you know, the thing that's inherent to a lot of this is the need to have conversations, the need for people to kind of be open and honest about the things that they don't know. I mean, what else do you think could be done to ensure that we're getting more voices at the table to kind of hash out the way groups should be represented?
For me, I think it starts at it sounds like such a wanky answer, but it starts at a really like grassroots level is my thing. Because I remember when I first kind of like joined this industry, and I'm not really in that much of a minority as like a gay white man, but I felt like a massive outsider. And for a very long time, I felt as though I like had to be like really grateful to kind of be part of this process in this industry. So I think getting people from different, it sounds really obvious, but it's like getting people from like different backgrounds at the table and having different opinions and different viewpoints, I think is like so important. And I think that's how you create the best work, because then so many people question what they're seeing, and you have that healthy debate, and you have that healthy debate in a very like safe, creative environment, because everyone's trying to kind of work towards getting like the best out of, you know, the campaign or the music video or like the bit of advertising, or like actually trying to make real change. Again, it sounds, for me, I hate saying things like this because it sounds like so obvious, but it kind of like the simplest answer is that it is really obvious.
Yeah, completely agree. I think it is. It obviously definitely starts at grassroots. I think one of the things though that we have to be aware of, and I'm not saying for 1 second I know the answer to this, is that I think for a long time we keep saying grassroots, which is absolutely right, but also it needs to have filtered through. We need people at senior levels who are leading the charge, and it's okay if we haven't got that representation there. That this needs to be at the top of the agenda for every single organisation. Now, I'm bound to say this, of course, but it is at the top of the agenda in our organisation. At Leo's, one, because it's massively important to me as a brown gay woman, but also because I work with a bunch of really fucking good eggs who get it and get that it's the right thing to do in terms of what we do of trying to be representative of society. Then obviously we need to be representative society, one within our organisation, but also in obviously what we put out. And there are discrepancies across the industry. Obviously we haven't got that right at all. But I think the other part of it, and this is something that we found very helpful, I'm going to do a plug for them because they're amazing, is we work with just a little tangent, but again, and this goes back to knowledge and the fact that we're all learning, we've got to have those debates. There are people who have them more naturally, but to make it something that's systemic within your organisation, you need help. So when something comes up with legal, you go to lawyers, right?
Yeah.
And you go, can I do this? Can I do that? What do you think? Because you need information and you want some counsel and some wisdom. So when we're talking about DE&I think the same things apply, particularly for a lot of people who genuinely it's not in their life experience. And I'm not saying that with any judgment, but if you are an entitled, white, a middle-class gentleman, you've had a very different gentleman, how Dickensian I got, bloke, you've had a very different experience, and it shouldn't be a blame that you don't understand what an experience is for someone from a minority, but you also, I think it's really helpful. So we work with the Diversity Standards Collective and also the Unmistakable on two levels. So one, we work with the Unmistakable with our clients so that we are forging an understanding within their organizations as well, because you can't just have it in the work, it has to be more in the DNA, as I said, of our organization, but also of theirs. So that's more on a strategic level. And with the Diversity Standards Collective, we make sure that when we're coming up with ideas from the start to and literally from its sort of inception, we are checking in with the communities that we are writing to or talking about or trying to engage or reflect, to make sure that it's not bullshit.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, they call it out. And you learn, it's not an aggressive thing, and people are like, oh, okay, well, that's, and it just opens up debate, conversation, but most importantly, just understanding. So I think you've got to look within, you've got to look into your partners, but I think it's also really important to get help in from people who know better, frankly. And again, I as someone from the queer community, I get asked a lot of questions, and I'm like, my membership to the gay community doesn't mean that I'm just the one representative of it. I can answer a few things, but it's from my point of view. I can't speak for my people.
Yeah.
So it's really important to be tapping in and making sure that we're in the right place and sensitive and being progressive as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all agree that we kind of need to have a seat at the table. So then on that point, I kind of want to talk about the pipeline and how we're ensuring that we're getting people in the building. Hopefully they can kind of be on that career pathway to leadership. At Dentistry Creative, for instance, we have a great relationship with the School of Communication Arts, where people, graduates get the opportunity to work on live briefs. But the challenge is, once they get in, they may not want to stay because of the culture. And so what can be done internally so that people actually feel like it is a safe space, that they don't feel like that they're an outsider, that actually they will have the opportunity to be here for the next 5 to 10 years and work their way up?
It's really interesting. I spoke to, this is years ago, I was talking to a fantastic kid who had come through Youngblood for DNAD. And which is genuinely a fantastic scheme of finding kids who have no access to sort of formal education, can't necessarily afford it, didn't actually know about this industry or know about the creative industry. And they're really smart in terms of how they kind of find these kids and get them motivated. Anyway, and she was so fucking talented and so bright, and obviously we got her in. And she'd been to a number of different agencies sort of on the rounds and sort of doing placements. And she just looked, it was coming to the end of like the 12 weeks or whatever, and she looked a bit down, and it was like, yeah, everything good, and it was really interesting. And God, she had balls on her for like a 22-year-old kid, like good on her. And I said, has it been a good experience? She went, look, I've met some amazing people, don't get me wrong, and I'm incredibly grateful for the opportunity, gratitude again. But I just feel like the charity case. And I said, what do you mean? She went, because I walk into these places and I realize why I've been brought in. Because it's so imbalanced. And imagine that as a feeling. And that's the problem when you look, obviously, and this is obviously what we're all trying to address, is it's great, that it's representative in our output, but until we get it sorted to create those safe spaces, until we get it sorted in our own places of work, it's still a difficult place to enter. You're still going to feel like an outsider.
Do you still feel like outsiders?
Not anymore, because I made like a conscious decision probably about 5 years ago with my own directorial and like photographic work. Because as I said before that, I was always kind of like, I mean, I'm still very humble and very grateful, but I kind of like flipped it and was like, do you know what? I'm not going to walk onto specifically sets and with like, you know, the all boys club and kind of bow down to that and feel grateful to be here. I'm like, no, I deserve to be here. I've worked very hard to be here. So I just started implementing really small, really simple things to make my sets feel more like I'd want to walk onto them. So it's like really simple things now. So it's like we'll put pronouns on the call sheet. Even if no one's non-binary, it's like that's not the point. It's a kind of signal to say we respect people's different gender identities. I also employ loads of different people from a variety of backgrounds, both like, you know, sexuality, gender identity, ethnicity. And for me, that's like really, really important, just so that we've got a variety of people on set. And again, it's not that like all boys club, so I'm a lot more, you know, I probably take it a bit too far the other way. I'm probably a bit too, you know, kind of flamboyant with it, but it's like, you know, I started wearing my nail polish, wearing my makeup to set, just to kind of flip this whole kind of like narrative of like, I should be grateful to be here and I should be like, you know, in my little box. It's like, yeah, no, I'm like, no, I'm here, I deserve to be here, these are my fucking ideas, I'm gonna do what I want to do, because it's like, not my creative, because I believe it's a collaborative process, but I got a bit more kind of like badass about it.
You made me very jealous of your nails this morning, by the way.
Oh, thanks, I did them last
I haven't
night.
had mine done, you look fabulous. I absolutely still feel like an outsider, but a very happy outsider, because I think it's a superpower. Because I think it gives you, by the way, I'm not granding myself up, I think this is just people from minorities. I think you have, on the whole, again, it's not everyone, but I think you have very, very deep wells of empathy, because you know what it's like not to be the first choice or the second choice. You know what it's like to have to really, really fight. You can see pain. But absolutely, I mean, this is a really base point, but, and I don't know what the experiences are in this room and stuff like that, but my colleagues are fantastic, but I tell them things like, listen, when you go out with your wife, in the 20 years that you've been married to your wife, have you ever once thought about when you want to give her a kiss in public? I fucking do that every single day. I have to have a little look around, even if I'm in Soho. Is this going to be okay if we're with our kids? Are we going to a safe place? It's always about safety. And that's just a different antenna to have up.
Yeah.
So, and it's a very different experience. And I'm not blaming anyone I'm fucking great that you haven't gone through it. But it does change your perception of the world, because you realize that a lot of people walk through the world in a slightly more difficult path. Mm-hmm. And trying to incorporate that, and fundamentally, I think creatively, that just makes the world so much richer, because it's about feelings, and it's about understanding the highs and lows of it, and ultimately how we can help. And the most important thing is those people who are entitled and in privileged positions, that allyship is so important.
Yeah.
Because the help to open those doors is fundamentally, it's obviously it's down to us, but it's fundamentally in partnership with them. It's not them and us, it's together.
Yeah.
And it can't just be us banging on a door.
No, but funnily enough, I was going to ask, how then do we feel about being ambassadors for our community and maybe playing into certain ideas and stereotypes of who we're supposed to be? You know, I think coming up, my background is the media industry, and just by virtue of being firstly the minority in any particular space, being African American, there was always this thought around, maybe if I play into the sassy black woman, you know, people kind of know what she's about, and I've given myself a bit of an identity, and actually it's just a bit of a safety net. But then I think as I got a little bit older, I found that a little bit limiting, and actually it was a thing whereby, say come George Floyd and Black Lives Matter, I actually don't want to be the D&I expert in the room right now. You know, I just want to exist and be me. And I kind of think when we talk about equity, it's actually just being able to be treated like everybody else. But I mean, how do you feel about playing into these ideas of, you know, the stereotypes? Can there ever be like a positive flip on a stereotype? Sorry.
No, it's a good question. I think there can. I don't know. It's a really tough thing to ask. I mean, I think kind of back to one of your earlier points in this question. I think it's really, in terms of the ambassador, I think it's really tough sometimes, because I think personally one of the ways I felt previously is I don't get as long of a leash to make mistakes or to, like, you know, fuck up. It's kind of like a one strike and then I'm gone, or kind of like that. That's the way I've kind of operated throughout my career in a way. But it's also kind of given me a little bit more of like a fearlessness to like try and experiment new things, because it's like, do you know what, fuck it, I'm just going to trust my gut and go for it a little bit more. So, but I think there is a lot more pressure when you feel like you're kind of representing a whole community, or that. I know it's not exactly answering your question, but I kind of like that's the way I've kind of like always felt. And I think that's why I've kind of had to operate a little bit with a bit of more of a chip on my shoulder of, I've got nothing to lose. I need to either go for it or not.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the stereotype of a brown queer woman is, so who the fuck knows? But I can only be who I am. I tell you one of the things, and not that I've wrestled with it, because again, it's a very privileged position to be in, but I am mindful of the fact that when I'm lucky enough to be asked to do talks and stuff like that, a lot of the talks I get asked to do are to do with diversity and inclusion, and that's wonderful in so many ways, and it's something obviously that is, it's not about close to my heart, it's a part of me, and it's something on my agenda every single day. But funnily enough, there's another word in my title, which is creative, and it would be nice to be able to talk about fucking creative things as well. And I love the boys. Again, I'm not having a pop at the boys, but nobody brings up one of the lads and goes, so what do you think about diversity? And actually, that's the question that should be fucking asked. So I'm very mindful of making sure that I'm not swamping the place with just, whilst I say that, I also take it massively seriously, and it's very important to me. I'm a nobody, but the few times that I've had people, young kids, particularly girls, who have come up to me or emailed me or texted me after I've done something and said, thank you for being an open queer woman. I had someone, it's so weird when you can't say the actual specifics. I'm not political enough to be able to know how to say it vaguely. It was someone, somewhere, who was older, and I did a town hall, a big town hall, a global town hall, and someone who I'd seen as a straight, white, middle-aged dude, you know, and he just sent me this email to say, thank you so much for being open about your queerness. It's very difficult for me, and it just gives me some courage that maybe I can push that. Like I said, I'm a nobody, so I'm not inspired. That's not it. But as I said, you just got to be there. So it's a balance where you go, you've got a responsibility, we have a responsibility, and it's something we've got to take seriously. But at the same time, it can't be purely defined, we cannot be purely defined by that, because that just perpetuates the problem. We are more than that, and we would like some equality.
Right.
So, like I said, funnily enough, sometimes I'd like to talk about fucking creative things as well.
Yeah, 100%.
Sorry, I just keep swearing at that, not that I'm slightly offended about it.
Me too.
So then, where we, I suppose, don't want to do all the work, this is where we hopefully invite allies to support us in that. I suppose, how can we navigate around performative allyship, which you kind of touched on at the beginning of our chat, and actually positive allyship? You know, how can we ensure that whenever we're factored into something, that they're not ticking a box, but maybe they're doing it with the best intention?
I think, you know, we're all smart people, and we know bullshit, and we can sniff bullshit out straight away. So I think you have to be, you can't just have ethereal conversations about these things. I think you need to be very public about them. I think you need to set goals and targets. And again, it's not a competition about like, oh my God, we managed to do this, we managed to do this. It's about the endeavor, and it's about trying. And one of the things that I'm really proud of is that we literally, you know, whenever we have an all-agency or we have a town hall, it is at the top of the agenda. And we're talking about everything that we're doing, because it should never be a box-ticking exercise of like, oh, they talked about D&I in November, wicked, they got it sorted. It's like, no, this is part of our DNA. This is stuff that we're striving for. And also, we've got to be honest about the fact that we're not perfect, far from it. All of us, but at least we're going in the right direction. So I think it needs to be public. I think we need to be held to account, all of us. And I think you need targets to be able to measure how far you've come along. And then it's a really simple conversation, because if it's just a whole bunch of wang, at the end of not even at the end of the year, within a few months, you're just like, well, gang, this is a bit bullshit. Come on, what are we doing? Pretty simple stuff, basically.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And I think for me, honesty, and that's the thing I took from that, honesty is like a really big part of the process. I know that when I've pitched on things before, both commercial and for music videos, and like some of the stuff I've had before is like, oh, we want to do something like, really diverse. We want to do something around like a drag queen or something. And I'm like, cool, I love the first bit of your sentence. We want to do something really diverse. But again, I'm really honest about it, and like, I remember I've said to a client before, it's like, look, this process for you is probably going to be really uncomfortable, but me as a creative, like my job is to kind of like hold your hand and guide you through it, and make sure that you understand what we're doing and kind of like why we're doing things for the reason that we are. So I think just being totally, like almost brutally honest with people is really, really important, specifically brands, agencies, record labels, and kind of whoever else. But also, it kind of like, for me, it's when I've made some of my best work, when they've gone, oh, we genuinely really do want to do something diverse and interesting and kind of like, and exciting that pushes boundaries, but it's kind of like yeah, but we don't really know how to do it. So we're going to throw out some like buzzwords. And it's like, okay, cool. I'm going to take those, throw the buzzwords away, and we'll do this instead because I've got a really cool idea around this. And I think that's kind of where some of the magic happens. But also on the kind of flip side of like honesty is trust. They need to trust you. They need to go, okay, cool. We're essentially it kind of like flips in like a certain way, because they become the outsiders. They become the kind of like minority in a way, and they kind of have to go, oh, okay, cool. All right, well, we're going to trust you through this process, and just don't let us fuck it up.
So shifting the conversation slightly, let's kind of dive into creative. Let's talk about creative for a brief moment. And I want to talk about the project you did with Proud Nation. So the point of it really was to look at the way the LGBTQIA plus community were being represented, because you came across a statistic that said like 72% of the community felt that any representation in advertising was quite tokenistic. So what were you trying to achieve with that?
Yeah, so I did this project called Proud Nation with the charity Stonewall and a charity called Models of Diversity, and that's kind of what kickstarted it, that statistic. And I'm a big like proponent of like LGBTQ history, but not just because I'm queer, but also I think actually LGBTQ history informs a lot of like our modern thinking about kind of like cultural and societal taboos. And so what I really wanted to do was kind of like do this kind of like portrait or like snapshot of the community as it kind of like stands today. Because if you look at a lot of like the kind of like gay liberation movement from like the late 1960s, early 1970s, again, you have the gay liberation movement, or it's very focused around like gay and lesbian rights. Whereas now, if you kind of like look at I just call it like the queer movement, it's so much more focused on human rights, and we have such a kind of like big push now, which is amazing, on trans rights for like non-binary people. Again, it's kind of gone from like LGB to LGBTQIA+, and like we're representing so much more of the community. So we kind of set around doing this project, which is a kind of portraiture and photographic project, just to showcase the incredible breadth of the community. So we had gay, lesbian, trans, non-binary people. We also had disabled queer people, because yes, they do exist as well. So it was trying to shine a spotlight on all the kind of like beautiful color of the community, which is why we shot the whole thing in black and white. So yeah, it was a really amazing project. Stonewall was super supportive. The team at Models of Diversity as well were great at helping us get some really, really cool talent. So it was just like a really nice way of just showcasing like the breadth of the community. And that's one of the things that's driven like so much of my work in like the last 5 years, is showcasing that there is more to the community than just gay and lesbian. Yeah. It's like there is like such a diverse array of people within this community.
Nice, thank you. And Chaka, you've been in the industry for such a long time. You've been in TV. You've been for a minute. And I'm just curious to know, as a creative leader, how you have approached sort of representation and tackling stereotypes in the work that you're creating.
Well, I think, again, an obvious thing to say is it starts with your creative department and making sure that they are not behind, but that's an important part of their agenda as well. Now, unsurprisingly, creative people are broad-minded, open-minded, and they're part of a much bigger community. I think then it's really interesting, the conversations that you have with clients. in terms of, it's not necessarily about how comfortable people feel, but again, about what type of representation that is, what's the meaning of it. And I think that's also actually a very, an interesting point, and I think at the heart of a lot of this is, I think representation of minorities can sometimes be felt to be a political point, as opposed to just a representation point. And that's one of our biggest challenges, is the fact that, no, we just want the normality of being a married couple. I tell you the thing I'm very excited by. I found this out yesterday, gang. I'm sure you all knew this. Peppa Pig has got his first 2 mummies in it. Fuck yeah. 2 polar bears, got a little daughter. My kids, unfortunately, are 10 and 12, but they were like, oh, well, that would have been amazing, particularly for the little prick who at 5 years old was telling one of my kids, oh, you 2 mummies can't exist. Shut up, you idiot. But anyway, if Peppa Pig had been there, bloody hell. Now, if Peppa Pig can do that, this should be the headline of this. If Peppa Pig can do it, what's stopping us? But it's amazing. I mean, kids are fantastic because they're all accepting, but again, just the fact that it's just part of the landscape. And that's ultimately what we're trying to get to. I think, again, if it's part of your everyday agenda, you're just pulling it up. So when you talked about stereotypes at the beginning, and again, it's no one's fault. Everyone falls into tropes. So the onus, the responsibility for me, the creative directors, my brilliant ECDs, is to be looking at work and kind of going, does it feel fresh? Does it feel relevant? And again, by the way, of course I'm bound to say this, I think we've got the best creative department in the world. They're all fucking brilliant. But occasionally, you'll see that little bit in a script where it's like, you know, and the boys are playing mischievously and the girls are reading.
Looking coy.
Like, no, the girls can play mischievously and the boys can be reading. These are small things. They're so tiny. But to your point about disability, again, it doesn't have to be a thing. Like, disability is part of our society, and it's glorious, and it should be celebrated, and it should just be represented. So I think it's all about literally sort of, I don't want to say the word vigilance, because that makes it sound a little bit dramatic, but I think it's about daily focus on these things in every single part, every detail of your organization. From the people in it, the conversations you're having with clients, the type of work that we're creating, the type of partners that we're working with, who's behind all of that stuff. If you pay attention to it, because if you don't, it just slips back into the norms, and we make such little progress. Like I said, I've got a 12-year-old and a 10-year-old. I really naively, a decade ago, genuinely, I was like, this is wicked. They are going to come into the world, into the workplace. It's going to be slamming. They are not going to deal with any of the shit that I do. What an idiot. And I look at Tiger's my eldest, and, you know, she's 10 years away, and I think, oh, fuck. It's better, it's way better, you know, her experience at school, the way they literally, when it comes to the queer rainbow of at such a young age, they're just so fluid with the language and so accepting. But the workplace that they're going into isn't as advanced as I had hoped it would be. And that's, again, it's our collective responsibility, so no blame. But we got to put a bit of gas underneath this thing, man. It's 2022.
Yeah.
In case anyone didn't know, it's 2022.
So then what advice do we give to people who want to come into this industry? And I asked this because earlier we were talking about your ambition, and I was like, oh my gosh, you know exactly what you want to do and where you want to go. And I guess to some degree, we needed to have a little something to get us to where we are. So what exactly, can we advise people to sort of make those initial steps into this space?
So I think the first thing is go and find the people who are talking the talk and walking the walk, and knock on their doors, and thank fuck there are more, hopefully, of us than there was a couple of decades ago. And I think the most important, this is a very easy thing to say to someone who's in their sort of late teens or early 20s, but it takes a lot of courage, is the important thing to remember, it is not about you changing to accommodate the environment that you're going into. Those environments, our environments, need you to come in and change us. And if that is not happening, do not fucking waste your time within that organization. Because sometimes, obviously, as I said, you shouldn't just slam the door. Some places want to change and they're open to it and they need help. Some places don't. But I think the key thing is to your point about, as the outsider coming in, you've got to stay who you are. And that's the beautiful thing. It's not just becoming vanilla like everything else. Do you know what I mean? I'm not saying the world is vanilla, by the way, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Vanilla is my favorite flavor of ice cream. But no, but I think to your point, I totally agree. I think the thing that I would probably say to myself if I was entering this industry like 10 years ago is I wish I was my authentic self a lot earlier, and I think I would have done probably twice as much in the same amount of time, because again, I would have had that fearlessness. And I think as well, it's like with those places or those companies or whoever that don't want to change, that's so, like, if you don't fit in there, that's also okay. They're just not right for you. Because also, I think the big thing about this industry as well is like it's about the right fit. It's like where do you fit? Do you feel comfortable here? If you don't, and they're unwilling to change, that's fine. They probably won't last very long. Is the thing. So just find somewhere else. It's kind of, I think it's probably easy maybe for us to say things like that because we have a community, or we had to find a family. I'm thinking specifically about like LGBTQ stuff as well. It's like you kind of had to find your people a little bit. And I think being in this industry is kind of like that as well. You have to kind of find those people that speak the same language, or even the allies who are actually really supporting diversity and inclusion and like, all that type of stuff. You have to find the people that want to kind of like have the same fights or like, champion the same things that you do.
Yeah, totally. And I think mentors are really important. Yeah. I think, there are so many ways to connect with people now via LinkedIn, via IG, stalk them, find them. Because I know coming up, if it wasn't for the people that I saw who were kind of taking me under their wing to say, you know what, Matilda, you've got this, even when it was really challenging, I don't know how far I would have gotten. So yay to us. I'm just going to use this moment to kind of throw out to the audience. If anyone has any questions, it'd be great to hear. Yes, we got a question at the front. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, thank you so much for the conversation. And I'm just really curious about, this idea of like when you get into the room, how did you guys deal with the internal dialogue of like, being there and feeling like you had a place there? So I was just sort of thinking how you guys managed that. I know you mentioned support networks, mentors, but if there's anything else you guys sort of dealt with in a sort of personal way?
It's interesting because I haven't spent an entire career in advertising. So I started off in production, which is a very different fare. And of course, there are inequalities still there, but it, particularly from a sexuality point of view, it's much more balanced, or at least you see other people who identify as queer in some shape or form. That said, I remember when I was 21 and I was in a post-production house, a very bougie post-production house and a very well-known one, and I was horrified because I went into the kitchen and these two women were having a conversation, and one of them, we're in the middle of fucking Soho, by the way, said, oh my God, it's disgusting, I saw these two blokes kissing. And it just sends this, it's the most, it's, I mean, to any of us, but as a queer person, it is literally, because it's a affront to you, it's like who you are. So you hear those things and obviously you become more resilient and you figure out how to deal with it. But as I said, production was much easier. And again, then I went into television. And television networks are, again, I didn't feel like the only person. Advertising has been really interesting because it's much more hidden and it's just not as visible. I was older, so it really helped me. I think also when I was younger, what helped was that obviously your social network is so massively important. So I had a massive community in Soho, so that was my gang. So it's not like I had a split life, but I had this support base. But from a diversity point of view, I'll be really honest, I've had amazing mentors. I'm the luckiest person in the world. It's never been about that. I've never been able to share that with anyone from a professional point of view. I'm not saying that as a sob story, by the way, but it's interesting, I think, because it's indicative of the fact that I don't think there's many of us, well, particularly when I was coming up, there weren't many queer people who were sort of leading things that I could identify with and go and kind of seek out. I hope that answers your question. That wasn't particularly positive. I feel like I put a downer on the thing now.
I think the only thing that I would probably add to that, and again, it's not really a positive spin either, is, and it's something I actually have to do a lot of, is remind yourself that it's not going to be an easy process. being in this industry, especially when you're in a minority, whatever that may be, is you kind of always have to, like, sometimes you're going to be the outsider in the room, and you're going to have that conversation that you then take home with you, and it feels really negative. But the positive, I guess, that you can take away from it is you're in the room. At least you're in the room, because if you're in the room, at least you stand a chance of making a change. At least you stand a chance of, like, being visible and kind of being there. And I guess that is kind of like the first step. So there is a positive to the negative.
Yeah. Just to add, role models who have really strong stories, showing my age a bit, but I very much looked at Oprah Winfrey. She was the one who I'm like, wow, if she can do it in the media, despite all the kind of BS I have to encounter, then maybe I can, So just kind of being fixed on someone. And nowadays, I look at someone like an Issa Rae, who's, the new kind of rising content creator, and I think, wow, if I'm coming up, I just look at her because it's like she's showing that certain things are possible. Cool. Sorry, just at the front.
I love this conversation. And Chaka, I consider myself a close friend to you, and it breaks my heart to hear that when you go to Soho with your wife, you had to look around before you give a kiss. I felt really touched with that. And I was last year in this training, stereotypes and diversity things that you have at the office. And I remember asking to the moderator, I share the fact that when I see these situations, the only thing that appears in my mind is I just want to say sorry, sorry to the gay people, sorry to the trans people that I didn't see, By the way, I come from Argentina, so if you feel uncomfortable in Soho, you don't want to know how you would feel in Buenos Aires, right? Because we are talking about a part of the world that is so much more evolved in terms of diversity and inclusion. So at this training, I got the advice of not going and saying sorry, because the advice I got was like the people that felt excluded don't want to be reminded that they were excluded. And then I got myself a question, is like, if I am not able to connect and say how I feel with these people, how am I going to make a change? I think that we need to start saying sorry for not being educated. And I don't even know what I should be blaming, my country, the fact that I come from a third world country, my education, my mom, I don't know. I don't want to be wasting time in seeing where I didn't get the information of the education. But I just want to start saying sorry because it's insane. It's absolutely insane.
So is the question more so how to kind of empathize with people from minority groups, and what should you do as far as it being an ally?
Yes, I just wanna. I don't wanna feel that I need to be walking tiptoe with minorities.
Yeah.
I just wanna. First, I don't wanna call them minorities. Starting from there, I just wanna feel that I can talk openly and I can share my feelings of blame and responsibility for this. How do you feel about that?
Well, you can imagine I completely agree in the fact that I think this goes back to what we were talking about earlier, is there's so much fear around having the wrong conversation. And as long as the intent and where someone's coming from is pure of heart and understanding and generosity, then bring it on. It's all about the tone of it. There was something that I heard a few weeks ago on a podcast. It was Glennon Doyle's podcast. And it was after Roe versus Wade. And a guy had called in to this podcast and said, I'm a massive ally. I don't know what to do. I want to help in some shape or form. What do I do? And Glennon Doyle's response was so spot on. I'd never thought about it this way. She said, it's not my responsibility to tell you what to do. She said, the thing you've got to think about as a man is, if this was an infringement on your body, what would you do? She went, men around the world get together around tables, brilliant, intelligent men, they solve massive problems. Just personalize it. It's not rocket science. I'm not saying this to you, Gab. And I hadn't, it's so simple just to go, well, if someone said to you, mate, that you can't do this with your body, what the fuck would you do? Funnily enough, within, 3 months, the most powerful men would have got round the table, lobbied government, pulled out funding, X, Y, and Z, and changed the law. I think it's interesting, again, in the sort of them and us bit, is that we're just all humans. Ultimately, we're just talking about equality. So the question for allies is just apply it to yourself. If you as a straight person, anyone who's straight in this room, had to think about whether you could kiss your partner, like just think what that feels like. So then you go back from that, and then you get to solutions. I'm nicking that from Glennon Doyle, making it sound like I came up with it, but I thought it was a really good, really good point.
Yeah, and I think just really quickly and I think that's where I come from as well. It's like we are all human, and kind of back to your point earlier about talking about the creative, and that's kind of like we are kind of like all the same in a way. But to kind of that counterpoint, I think the thing that I always try and do is like rather than recognize like the differences in terms of like the minority groups, it's like let's celebrate them, because I think that's where understanding really does come, and that's where kind of like change can really happen. But yeah, as you said, we're all human.
How much more time? Any more questions can we take? One? No? None? No? Oh, I'm so sorry. We've got to wrap up. But yeah, we'll be outside to chat. Thank you so much, Chaka and Jordan, for this amazing conversation. So, thank you, everybody.